Live right here on the early line on SportsGrid. It is officially not a Football Friday anymore. At the end of the 2024 NFL season, of course, the week following Super Bowl Sunday between the Eagles and the Chiefs. It will feel like a Football Friday in Philadelphia. About 1 million people expected for the parade down Broad Street in Philly today to celebrate the Eagles' second Lombardi Trophy in franchise history, and at least for the next few moments, Joe, albeit the offseason, the NFL never truly stops. A Football Friday, if you will, here on TEL. The reports we had over the weekend is basically what became official yesterday from the horse's mouth, from the franchise itself, in a couple of statements released by the New York Jets, that they are officially parting ways with Aaron Rodgers and moving ahead with a different option at the quarterback position. We got a statement from team owner Woody Johnson. We got another statement from the new brass, the new head coach Aaron Glenn, and the new general manager Darren Muge. All in essence, Joe, saying what we already knew to be the case, that the Jets are not going to move forward with Aaron Rodgers at the quarterback position.
And it's such again, not surprising for the Jets. They needed to blow everything up and start from scratch. So I'm glad they're doing that. But as far as Aaron Rodgers goes, at 41 years old, Ben, I mean, this is not a Peyton Manning situation when he was this age and he ended up going to Denver, remember? And but right. Denver was a quarterback away from being a world champion. The teams that need quarterbacks right now are nowhere even remotely close to a quarterback away from contending for anything. So I don't know what happens with him. You never know with him, but I would imagine playing football is probably not what he's going to be doing, especially with a team that's going to be middle of the road at best.
So that's the interesting component, I think, in the Aaron Rodgers part of this conversation. What is his future? He is 41 years old. He has played 20 seasons in the National Football League. You look at the last 2 years, frankly, a disastrous and failure of a tenure in New York. It's not like the guy is still slinging it. However, he did win back-to-back MVP awards not all that long ago in this decade, in 2020, in 2021 in Green Bay, his third and second to final years in Green Bay alongside the Packers. But let's start with the Jets component quickly here, Joe, because when you look back on these 2 years with Aaron Rodgers, it was a disaster. Not his fault. In 2023, 4 offensive snaps into the year, he tears his left Achilles. The Jets struggle from then on out. But each of the 2 years, Joe, New York entered with optimism and expectation Gang Green had not seen in a long time. 9.5 the win total, both entering 2023 and 24. Over having plenty of juice. Expected to be a playoff team in a competitive AFC. So when you look at this year especially, in which Rodgers remained healthy the entirety of the year, and you had so much young talent across the roster, offensively and on the defensive side of the football, to fire Robert Saleh just 5 games into the year for all that the Jets invested into Aaron Rodgers. Let's not forget, when he declared out of the darkness back in March of 2023 that he wanted to play for the Jets, it wasn't that he was a free agent. The Packers had to trade him to New York. So the Jets gave up multiple second-round picks. Then they bring in everybody that Aaron Rodgers was comfortable with. Allen Lazard, Randall Cobb. You brought in guys like Devontae Adams in a trade trying to save face this year. You bring in the OC in Nathaniel Hackett that frankly does not hack it at his job. You invested a ton in Aaron Rodgers, Joe, to ultimately in a 2-year span, all coming in 2024, end up with just 5 total wins. The Jets were a 5-12 team this season, well short of that 9.5 preseason win total.
Yeah, very bad. But I mean, listen, it was so bad there that this had to get blown up, right? So it's going to be a new era no matter what they decide to do for the New York Jets organization. But I will say this, Ben, there was a previous time where the Jets went into a season with a new coach, a new GM, and ultimately a new quarterback. And that was back in 2015 with Todd Bowles. Mike McCagnon was your new GM. Oh, yeah, and Ryan Fitzpatrick was the new quarterback of the New York Jets. And as it turns out, they went 10-6, and it was the last winning season the Jets have had when they did that. So the problem is, and I loved Fitzpatrick, but I don't see availability right now with free agents where somebody's going to do that. The options are limited. Maybe Jordan Travis could be the lottery ticket of all lottery tickets that the Jets ended up drafting out of Florida State a couple of years ago, Ben. He's still on the roster. He's still on the team. He's under Jets control. Whether or not the leg is healed, we'll find out. But my goodness, wouldn't that be something?
And that's part of the conversation as well. You make this move to move on from Aaron Rodgers. That makes sense. It's a new franchise, a new era under the guidance of Aaron Glenn and new general manager Darren Moogie. But it's not as though the Jets have somebody in-house that you're like, yep, that's the heir apparent. Jordan Travis, 5th-round pick this past year. That would be a lot of confidence in a day 3 pick. And there's not a robust quarterback market either in the draft, where the Jets select 7th overall, or in free agency this offseason. So the Jets have to figure out that QB question, no doubt. Quickly here, Joe, as we said, Aaron Rodgers, 20 years in the NFL, 41 years old. Obviously, he will take his time now to contemplate his football future. In 2025, do you think Aaron Rodgers is playing in the NFL, or might he decide retirement is his best choice?
I don't foresee it. I mean, listen, the one thing we know about the guy, besides being a few fries short of a Happy Meal, Ben, is that he wants absolutely nothing to do with playing for mediocre teams and being mediocre. Right. That's not who he is. So the problem is the options are not great when you go down to teams that need quarterbacks. They're not good. So I think he retires, eventually ends up in the booth.
And, Joe, would this version of Aaron Rodgers even walk into a new facility and be the starting quarterback from the jump? Would he be involved in a QB competition? Not something that seems like Aaron Rodgers would want to be a part of. Plenty more on the early line next. Let's keep going around the National Football League off season, almost feeling like a Football Friday, live right here on the early line on SportsGrid. He is Joe. I am Ben. What a week it has been for Kellen Moore in the city of New Orleans. Sunday evening, as the offensive coordinator of the Eagles guides Philadelphia to a Super Bowl championship and Lombardi Trophy in dominant fashion. And then it becomes official, what we all expected, named the new head coach of the New Orleans Saints. So yesterday afternoon, as the new skipper of the Saints, he meets with the media for the first time. Joe, here was Kellen Moore talking about the process of how he became a 36-year-old head coach in New Orleans.
I think certainly the great joy that as you went through this process, it became very evident was this is a collaborative effort here. This is a team. This is a group that works really well together. We're excited to go through this journey. Obviously, we'll begin the process of evaluating the player side of this and building a coaching staff and doing it the right way moving forward. It's going to be a really fun process.
Kellen Moore, throughout the entirety of his football life, when he was a legend on the Smurf turf and in the blue in Boise, Idaho, has always had a baby face. He has always looked young. It is crazy now to see him as the youngest head coach at only 36 years old in the National Football League. His first time as a head coach after a successful run, 4 years in Dallas as an offensive coordinator, a stop in L.A., that didn't work out so great, but now a Super Bowl championship-winning OC this previous season in Philadelphia. Joe, in my estimation, Kellen Moore has the pedigree, the credit, and the resume to, I think, be a successful offensive mind and head coach in the NFL. He has basically been a coach since he was 20 years old at Boise State. But I don't necessarily believe the situation he finds himself in New Orleans is all that favorable for a first-time head coach to have success. Because here's what the Saints are looking at. A 5-12 season a year ago. 4 consecutive years now of missing out on the postseason after 4 straight years of winning the NFC South. 120-1 to win next year's Super Bowl. They have the 9th overall pick, 8 total picks in the 2025 NFL Draft, and you can see they are in cap hell, or perhaps at the very worst, purgatory, as they are in the red, minus $54 million. So over $50 million over the cap as of right now. Not necessarily, Joe, the financial flexibility necessary for a franchise that needs to bolster up its roster in many different positions.
Yeah, and listen, it's not a, we're a coach away kind of situation, although I do think he's going to inherit one of the he's got more versatile weapons on this roster than many teams do. I mean, the fact you got Kamara and Taysom Hill and you have an experienced quarterback who, when healthy, Ben, has shown an ability to be able to light teams up here. So I could not have been more impressed with the coaching job, what we saw in Dallas versus the offensive coaching job we saw and how they transformed that Philadelphia team into a world champion. He's got a lot of very interesting pieces offensively to make teams very worried about playing the Saints, I think, next year.
I would agree, Joe. But the biggest question, of course, is filling out the quarterback spot. We'll hear what Kellen Moore had to say about Derek Carr in just a little bit. I'll give you a little bit of a paraphrase. Non-committal. Highlighted what Derek Carr had done, but not necessarily saying this is our guy, this is our starter, this is our face of the franchise, which frankly, Joe, it didn't take Kellen Moore's introductory presser to let us all know that would more than likely be the case. But it's not Spencer Rattler. It's certainly not Jake Haener. And so for the offensive mind in Kellen Moore to make it work, you would think there needs to be a partnership with a quarterback. And Joe, that's the interesting thing. I tallied it up yesterday. Of the 32 NFL organizations entering this offseason, I would say 7 firmly have to address the quarterback position. And by I mean addressing it, not like, ooh, do we like this guy or this guy? Like they have to have a new person in there, either via the draft, free agency, or a trade from the guy who started last year as the team's starting quarterback, and the Saints are certainly one of them. So you have nearly a quarter of the league looking for an answer at QB with not many available QBs on the market.
I know. And the ones that are available, Ben, do they move the needle for you? Because
exactly.
I doubt very much they're moving the needle for the Saints either.
Derek Carr might be a guy that other teams want to invest in this offseason. But does Derek Carr going to the Steelers or the Jets make them a Super Bowl contender? No. We'll hear from Kellen Moore even more so next. Live right here on the early line on SportsGrid, we continue with the NFL news and notes even firmly in the offseason all around the National Football League on what feels like a Football Friday on TEL. So we're talking about Kellen Moore. Introductory press conference yesterday as the new head coach in New Orleans, the 7th and final new head coaching hire in this coaching carousel in 2025. And, Joe, he is an offensive whiz kid. He is 36 years old. He has been an offensive coordinator for 6 seasons already in the National Football League. This previous year in the 2024 campaign, leading Philadelphia to a Lombardi Trophy. So you have that offensive mastermind. That's great. But to have success offensively, you need to also believe that you have a successful starting quarterback. Does Kellen Moore? In New Orleans is Derek Carr. Let's hear from the new skipper of the Saints.
Yeah, Derek's a tremendous quarterback in this league. I've had so much respect for him, the journey that he's been on. He's a starter in this league. He's a premier player in this league. He's had a great journey, obviously going from Fresno State to the Raiders and now here. Really excited to team up with him and go through this process. And so just like any player on this roster, I just got here a few days ago, and I'm excited to go through this journey with all of them.
Again, you heard Kellen Moore reference it right there. Through his time at Fresno State, they were conference competitors, Joe. They played in games against each other in college football. Kellen Moore at Boise State and Derek Carr at Fresno State. So that was Kellen Moore's nice way, politically correct way, if you will, of highlighting Derek Carr's football life, but not exactly saying, hey, this guy is the future of our franchise. So credit to the Saints media members. They kind of press that question a little bit more.
Yeah. Listen, I think it's interesting that he's already decided he's going to be calling plays. He's also said, I could care less what's going to happen with the defense, whether we play a 3-4 or 4-3. So it's going to be, I think it's going to come down to whether or not he believes Derek Carr can execute the kind of plan that he wants. But don't forget, he missed 7 games last year. They didn't win one of them, the Saints. So, say what you want, but there is some value in keeping him there with a young new head coach.
And we'll see. And we'll see how that goes. So, again, as we said, the Saints media members were like, listen, that's nice of you, Kellen, to highlight all of your time against Derek Carr and what you think of his football playing career. But is he the starting quarterback in New Orleans?
Right.
Again, the new head coach of the Saints.
And following up on Derek, do you view that as you guys have a decision to make at quarterback, or do you view it as Derek Carr as the quarterback?
I view it as Derek Carr is a tremendous starting quarterback in this league. We're fortunate to have him, and we're excited to go through this process, as we build this roster together. Again, I'm meeting these guys for the first time the last few days. I'm really excited to meet more of them, and this will be a lot of fun.
I'll give Kellen Moore credit, man. He came with some answers ready to go to the questions he knew he was going to receive, much like Aaron Glenn did at his introductory press conference in New York about Aaron Rodgers. You never can, Joe, go out there and make a simple yet strong statement in your first press conference when it's your first day on the job, basically, officially, to be like, hey, Derek Carr stinks, guys out. We're already talking about our future at the quarterback spot. You sit there, you observe, you learn, and then you give it about a week and a half, and you get a report that Derek Carr is going to be on the trading block this offseason.
Yeah, and that's the other aspect of it, right, Ben, is that can or will a team offer the Saints an ability to get out from under a contract, maybe get some cap relief, maybe get some assets? It's not like, again, he is the starting quarterback in the NFL, so there is some value on the open market for a Derek Carr.
Yes, and we'll see exactly what Derek Carr's value is. So let's start with the individual that is Derek Carr. 2 years ago, Joe, when he leaves the Las Vegas Raiders, because the Raiders, despite drafting Derek Carr and getting the best out of him for about 8 NFL seasons, said, we're going to make some moves. The Raiders have not exactly been in a great position at the quarterback spot and are not, at this moment, entering 2025. Derek Carr is going to the New Orleans Saints in the 2023 NFL offseason. And the Saints then become the odds-on favorite, the front runner to win the NFC South. Was not a great 2023, and through a lot of 2024, poor play from Derek Carr, but also injuries a part of that conversation. There you see the stats this past year for Carr. 15 touchdowns to 5 INTs and only 10 games played. We all forget that New Orleans was the best offense in the NFL the opening 2 Sundays of the year. One thing that will always be funny to me, Joe, and we can do this as you reflect on a season and you get deeper into the year and you have those sweeping reactions and takeaways, as we always do, even though we warn ourselves from doing so in the first few weekends of the NFL. Week number 3, the Eagles start off 1-1. They head to the Saints, who are an offensive juggernaut, who had scored at least 40 points in each of their first 2 games, 91 in total. In the Saints, in New Orleans, mind you, but the Saints in that Week 3 matchup against Philly were a 2.5-point home favorite for a 5-win football team against the eventual Super Bowl champs. All to say that they got off to a great start this year, but obviously things did not work out. Joe, you mentioned it. Do you think it would be wise for Kellen Moore and New Orleans to bring back Derek Carr? Do you think that is the eventual decision that is made?
Well, until you're offered up a reason not to keep Derek Carr, right, Ben? What's your option here? Are you just, maybe he loves Taysom Hill, and maybe Taysom Hill is going to be your quarterback moving forward, at which point they seek a trade or let Derek Carr open on the market to see what they can get for him. I think there are, an aging quarterback with an aging defense, no salary cap. I mean, there's not a lot the Saints can do, but one thing they can do is start shedding some salary and hopefully be able to get some assets back. And the guy that would bring the most, of course, is Derek Carr. And I think maybe that's why they're so non-committal. Don't forget, Taysom Hill's on this roster here, man. So it's not like he can't play quarterback.
I mean,
you're not winning anything anyway. So,
yeah. So, Joe, again, that's kind of the issue, right, with a lot of these teams that I stated. As you kind of look at the NFL draft order and where things stand around the NFL, I'll run through it quickly here because it's a part of the conversation. I found 7 teams that not have a quarterback question like a guy on the roster. Is he going to live up to the hype? Kind of like Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis, if you will. But legitimate teams that more than likely will have a different starting quarterback to begin 2025 than they did in 2024. The Saints, one of those 7. The Titans, draft first overall as of right now. The Browns, 2nd overall. The Giants, 3rd overall. The Raiders, 6th overall. The Jets, 7th overall. The Saints, as we said, 9th overall. We're up to 6 teams right there. And then I think you could probably scroll down the board a little bit and get to the Pittsburgh Steelers that have their own quarterback questions this offseason. So give or take 6, 7 teams of the 32, nearly a quarter of the National Football League that are looking for a new starting quarterback this offseason that don't already have somebody in place currently on the roster. And Joe, there's not many out there. This quarterback draft class in 2025, not nearly as elite as last year. We saw 6 guys go in the opening round in 2024, the most ever in the modern draft era, dating back to 1997, all 6 in the first 12 picks as well. We might see 2 or 3 in this year's first round of the NFL draft. And there's not many free agents out there either. Sam Darnold maybe is the pick of the litter. Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, Jacoby Brissett. You would have to make a deal, Joe, for a guy like a Kirk Cousins or a Derek Carr.
You're going to have to make there are some decisions that need to be made here. I mean, because that list of quarterbacks, you want to throw in Cooper Rush or Jameis Winston in that list, and you kind of get an idea of what we're looking at here, Ben, on the open market.
Yeah, it's not exactly plentiful, if you will. More around the early line next.